Nothing exposes congressional ignorance and incompetence better than a congressional hearing. You actually have to know something to sound impressive in a congressional hearing. It's not just reading speeches, it's interactive. Asking a question of the chairman of the Federal Reserve or making any kind of statement to him when he is actually there to respond is a grand opportunity to look and sound like an idiot, an opportunity that many senators and House members have taken over the years. Witnesses at congressional hearings in the House and the Senate tend to know a little more, in fact, much more, about the subject at hand than the members of the committee listening to them. Today, the most experienced testifier under pressure in modern Washington history took the Hill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have greatly appreciated all of this effort that has gone into making sure that we are all moving forward in trying to realize the hope of providing health security for every American.
The pressure is on potential presidential candidates in high-profile hearings.
We have now set the bar so low that modest improvement in what was a completely chaotic situation, to the point where now we just have the levels of intolerable violence that existed in June of 2006, is considered success. And it's not. This continues to be a disastrous foreign policy mistake. And we are now confronted with the question, how do we clean up the mess?
Senator Obama knew that he needed to have a presidential level of credibility in such hearings. Republican Senator Marco Rubio has been talking tough about Benghazi for months.
One of the narratives that the Obama campaign has laid out is that bin Laden is dead, they've bragged about that forever, and that al-Qaeda is in retreat. And you start to wonder that they basically say, do not allow any story to emerge that counters that narrative. Is that why for 2 weeks they told us that the Libyan incident in Benghazi was a popular uprising and not a terrorist attack? Because it ran counter to their campaign narrative.
And so the pressure was on Senator Rubio today to deliver to his fans all the fire and brimstone they had every right to expect. He wasn't just facing the Secretary of State who was taking responsibility for what happened in Benghazi. He was facing possibly the next Democratic nominee for president. Tonight, Marco Rubio fans could not be more disappointed.
One of the things that I'm most interested in exploring with you today a little bit is how information flows within the State Department. Were you ever asked to participate in any sort of internal or interagency meeting before this attack with regards to the deteriorating security situation in Libya? Did this issue come up with regards to the inability of the Libyan government to protect our diplomatic institutions? Did that issue come up at all in that conversation?
Of course.
There was a conversation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was a constant conversation, Senator.
Before the attack in Benghazi, what had we done specifically to help them build their security capacities?
Well, there's a long list, and I'll be happy to provide that to you, because it is filled with, training, with equipment, with the kind of planning that they had not done before, and I'd be happy to send you the detail on that, Senator.
The most experienced senators, when facing a strong, experienced witness, do not make the mistake of actually asking questions. They use their 5 minutes to make speeches instead and leave as little time as possible for answers.
Why is it that the administration still refuses to provide the full text of emails regarding the deletion of references to al-Qaeda and terrorism in the talking points? Why do we care? Because if the classified information had been included, it gives an entirely different version of events to the American people. And by the way, as I said at the time, I just happened to be on one of those talk shows, people don't bring RPGs and mortars to spontaneous demonstrations.
And then there are the surprises. It's rare, but it happens. The senator, the congressman whose name you didn't know, who makes you turn and say, "Who's that?" That happened to me today when I heard this.
Let me just say, I'm actually an Air Force pilot. I was one of a handful of Republicans to vote to support the president's position in Libya. I think we did the right thing there. Aviano Air Base is 1,044 miles from Benghazi. Aviano Air Base is an F-16 base. Airplanes could have been put in the air after being fueled, even if they didn't have missiles on them, and there can be non-violent things that F-16s can do to disperse crowds that I know of well.
Wow. That was Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger. He just won his first re-election in Illinois' 16th congressional district, a swing district where he has to be able to appeal to Democrats and independents. He served in Iraq and is currently a pilot in the Air National Guard. He is the Republican Cory Booker of sorts, part politician, part superhero. He once tackled and disarmed a man who slashed a woman's throat. The attacker was arrested and the woman survived. He was named one of Time magazine's 40 under 40 rising stars of American politics. Marco Rubio should be very, very worried about Adam Kinzinger.
The other question I have, too, I'm laying a few out for you. The FES team, the Foreign Response Team, was that your decision not to deploy that right away? Was that an issue of logistics? I'm worried about the strategy of leading from behind. If the United States ambassador in Libya, and I say this respectfully, can't get a message forward to the Secretary of State about his concern about security in one of the most hot zones in the world, I worry about a lead from behind strategy. And if we have no assets on alert that can respond in a 7-hour lull in 2 different attacks in the most hot spot, one of the most hot spots in the country, in the world, on 9/11, on the anniversary, is the lead from behind strategy failing? Because I really want American leadership to be strong. I believe in freedom, and I believe we're the people that are going to be able to take freedom around the globe.
He was asking perfectly reasonable questions in which he inserted the irrelevant but partisan phrase leading from behind in order to appeal to his Republican base, which is a smart move for him. But here was Secretary Clinton's answer.
Thank you for your service, Congressman, both in the Air Force and here. There was a lot packed into that. Let me see what I can cover quickly, and then we'll get the rest to you in writing. DOD took every action it could take, starting from the time that the President directed Secretary Panetta and Chairman Dempsey to do so. Again, I turn to the ARB because that's, to me, a much more factually based finding. The board found no evidence of any undue delays in decision-making or denial of support from Washington or from military combatant commanders. Quite the contrary. The safe evacuation of all U.S. government personnel from Benghazi 12 hours after the initial attack and subsequently to Ramstein was the result of exceptional U.S. government coordination and military response and helped save the lives of 2 severely wounded Americans. Now, having said that, I think it's very important we do more to coordinate with DOD along the lines of what you're talking about, because who knows what's going to be facing us in the next months and years.
Joining me now, Crystal Ball, host of MSNBC's The Cycle, and Steve Clemens, editor-at-large of The Atlantic, Washington. Crystal, not a single dot was connected to any other dot in the Republican conspiracy theory dream of what happened here.
And they have been waiting for this moment for so long, and they got absolutely nothing because Hillary Clinton is so good in these situations. Here's the thing that's so amazing about her and about her career in politics, you know, out of her husband's scandal and out of the Republican absolute hatred of her, she becomes a senator and a great senator. Out of her own presidential loss, she becomes Secretary of State and has never been more popular or more esteemed. And out of this hearing, which was supposed to be the start of her political undoing coming into 2016, I think she emerges looking better than she ever has before. And we're all reminded of just how capable, how skilled, and how serious this woman really is.
Steve Clemens, she's also very difficult to lay a glove on as a witness in congressional hearings, which everybody learned in 1994 when she went around with the health care bill. the bill, it turned out, was doomed, but her presentation and her testimony was unshakable, authoritative, clear, and left no question unanswered. And we saw that today.
Well, Lawrence, when she was running for president, I went back and studied her record to try and see whether she was a passive legislator in the Senate or whether she had executive skill sets, and she really drilled down. So I actually went to find the most boring, least visible moments of Hillary Clinton's Senate career when she was a member of the Environment and Public Works Committee. And what you saw her do in the witness stand today, she did as a senator in that committee. She had drilled down into such detail into issues that you and I and most of the viewers tonight would not be interested in. And so she exhibited something today that's just part of her DNA and her ability to really know thoroughly something, so that people like Ron Johnson and Rand Paul and others who tried to throw her off her game, they looked embarrassing. This is not only somebody who's one of the most popular politicians in the country, but someone who, for obvious reasons, had drilled down so deeply into this issue that they were the ones that began to look immature versus a very profound, professional, capable maturity that Hillary Clinton displayed.
Steve, I'm so glad you mentioned the Environment and Public Works, because that is the kind of committee that has a lot of what people consider very boring stuff. I used to be the chief of staff of that committee, and I can attest to a certain amount of boredom in most of the hearings. But over the years, there have been senators, including Barbara Boxer, who's now the chairman of it, who take that committee and other committees like that and turn them into real forums for real learning, Crystal, especially in the hearing process. This today was one of those hearing situations in both bodies, in the Senate and the House, where an adversarial side, the Republicans, came in with some case they were hoping to prove, which they could only possibly have proved in some sort of crazy Perry Mason moment where Hillary Clinton just cracks and confesses or something.
You're right. You discovered it. It was in the kitchen with the butter knife or whatever. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. And look, she came in fully prepared, and they have been relying on basically unreality. They've been relying on Fox News and Drudge Report sort of talking points to make their case against Hillary Clinton, and initially against Susan Rice and now against Hillary Clinton. When you're actually faced with the facts, when you're faced with the woman herself, their argument doesn't stand up to scrutiny. I think that was abundantly clear today.
And Steve, what you are going to have to find in this mystery is a motive for Susan Rice or Hillary Clinton or President Obama or anyone in the administration to mislead, to actively try to present false facts about what happened in Benghazi, and no one has ever come close to suggesting any kind of motive.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, Hillary Clinton demonstrated what a professional she is by saying that she absolutely takes responsibility. And with the review board's work, she's gone through to sort of look at this question of what ought to be a direct reporting of crises up to the secretary level. But also what hasn't received as much attention is she's warning that there are other facilities out there that we have today. It was very true on the day that this tragedy occurred. You know, people died. Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other great Americans died in this conflict, and that we today have under-resourced defenses for other facilities, and she said we need to fix this. And those members of the GOP who were launching their attacks on her, some of them have been part of the process of trying to delegitimate and undermine diplomacy and the State Department for years. And this is time for them to stand up and actually resource this department as it should be.
Steve Clemens and Crystal Ball, thank you both for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
My pleasure.
Coming up, Hillary Clinton's future and how it might collide with Joe Biden's future. And in the rewrite tonight, Wayne LaPierre attacked President Obama's statement about absolutism in his inaugural address. The blood-drenched lobbyist for the NRA actually quoted a liberal Supreme Court justice in making his case last night. I will show you tonight why Wayne LaPierre was absolutely wrong about that Supreme Court justice and why he is absolutely wrong about the Second Amendment. And dear friend of the show, George Takei, is here tonight to talk about what the president's inaugural address meant to him and anything else George wants to talk about whenever he wants to talk about it.